Welcome to the Moto Fugazi build part 6, where I'm custom building a Honda CX500 motorcycle. In this video, I'm going to be refinishing the wheels, starting with cleaning, sanding, priming, painting, clearing, and all that fun stuff. So I'm starting off here with some Simple Green, which is my go-to degreaser. It's a great cleaner for just about anything automotive, and a steel brush to get things started. The goal here is to knock off all the grease and break the surface loose. I'm using the same degreasing spray as I used in part 4 where I painted the engine. The idea here is to make sure that the wheel is completely bone dry and free of any lubricants. The paint's not going to stick on any oil. Because there's not a lot of grease and oil that cakes on a wheel, a simple spray down and wipe's all you need, and in about 2 minutes the air will dry the wheel off, and it should be bone dry at this point. I personally like the B12 degreaser, which you can pick up at any AutoZone for like $4 or $5. The front wheel was really just dirty. It didn't have any grease on it, but I went ahead and gave it the full cleaning just to be safe. Not to get on a soapbox or anything, but I think it's pretty important to really thoroughly clean a wheel before painting, because you're not going to know you missed a spot until long after it's painted and the paint starts to lift because it's trying to stick to a greasy spot. So I've got a surfacing wheel attached to a Dremel here. This surfacing wheel is designed for sheet metal, but it did a pretty good job of breaking the top coating off the aluminum. Now this surfacing wheel was my favorite. I think you can pick this up for about $7 at AutoZone. Again, it's designed for body work, but it did a really good job of hogging out all the paint. And of course, my favorite part, sandpaper. 200 grit, I believe that was, to get to all the hard to reach places. Details count when it comes to painting though, so you gotta do it. So I'm going back through here with degreaser because there's a high chance that even during sanding I picked up a little bit of grease or a little oil that I missed in the cleaning stage, and then rubbed it around with the sandpaper. So what this does is make sure that the grease is loose, but I'm also using this to help pick up any extra dust. And that is a front wheel that's ready for paint. Now the back wheel was a little bit trickier than the front. It had a lot smaller detailed areas that the wire wheel and the surfacing wheel just wouldn't touch. And you know, a motorcycle wheel, unlike a car wheel, is two-sided, and it has a center point that needs to be painted as well. So that just added to the difficulty of sanding down these wheels and making sure that they are free of grease and dust. So here's what I mean. I have to sand the inside of the wheel to make sure that paint's going to stick to it, and it was a huge pain. So what I've done here is suspended the wheels from the ceiling of my garage with a rope, more specifically a 100-pound tie-down rope from Ace Hardware, and all I've done is pass the rope through the axle point on the wheel. The rope is, and you can't tell here, but the rope is about 6 feet from end to end, so they're not actually touching the wheel like it looks like in the video. What it did is it gave me just enough distance to not touch the wheel, but allow me to paint the front and back side of the wheel. And again, here you can see I'm using my light on the back so that I can see and get a clear idea of what areas need paint. So for this first prime coat, I used the VHT rattle can primer, which is the same stuff that I used to prime my engine. And again, it laid out really thick, really evenly. Pretty happy with it so far. So it's been a full day since I primed the wheels, and I've just come out to check on them. And with the primer fully dry, I'm not sure how I missed it, but I noticed a few sticker boogers. You can kind of see there and there, and on this one here and here. I'm not really sure how I missed that in the cleaning process, but I'm going to go ahead and sand those areas back down and put another light coat of primer on them. After sanding for maybe 10 or 15 minutes with the 220 grit, everything looked good. The stickers were removed. It was time to get back to painting. So just to give you a better idea of how I hung the wheels, there's my rope, and I just pushed the rope through the wheel and then hung it to the rafter. I would strongly advise to anyone who copies this method to get rope that's strong enough to hold up your wheels for a few days and fasteners that are strong enough. You're not going to take these wheels down right after you paint them because they'll be wet and they'll stick to whatever surface you lay them on, so they've got to be hung up there for quite a while. So while waiting for my second coat of primer to dry, I'm going to go ahead and do some quick painting on my oil filter housing. As I mentioned before, this is the VHT cast iron look bottle can paint, and this is the VHT engine clear that I'm putting on now. This stuff goes on great. I'm really happy with the look, and it's going to look awesome when the motor's back in the bike. Alright, it's been about 2 hours since the last coat was put down, so I'd say they're dry. They look really good now. Nice and smooth, no boogers. So next step is going to be a quick hit with some steel wool, a little bit of light sanding, knock off the dust, and then we're gonna lay some paint. Alright, so as you can see, I've decided to go with a bright silver from VHT, which I think will complement the bike very nicely when it's finished. Just like the engine paint, VHT recommends you do a couple light coats before putting on a final thick coat. The last thing you want is runs and curtains on your wheel paint, so I highly advise you follow their instructions. And just like the engine paint, this stuff goes on really thick. I was able to get, I think, 4 coats out of 1 can of the silver VHT wheel paint, so plenty of coverage. At this state here, I'm doing the clear, and again, just like the paint, a couple light coats the first time around, then lay it on heavy. You don't want runs in your clear either. So again, I'm using the light to make sure I didn't miss any spots. It's really good to have as much light as possible on paint to make sure that your coverage is even and to make sure that everything gets a little bit of clear on it. This is the final coat. So I did, I think, 3 coats of clear, maybe 4, in the course of an hour. And afterwards, I'm going to go ahead and just leave the wheels suspended for the next couple days to let them dry completely. We've got pretty good weather, so I don't think there's any concern about freezing, ruining the paint, or anything like that. Again, I'm using the light to make sure I got good, even coverage. And I can tell you, I'm really happy with how well this part of the project went. So here's a before and after. I let the wheels hang to dry for 4 days and they look great. VHT, I highly recommend it. I'm not a paid sponsor, but this stuff did a great job of refinishing these 36-year-old wheels. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you for part 7.